stand on his own two feet. He has no self-confidence. He has no confidence in his own race, because the white man destroyed your and my past, destroyed our knowledge of our culture. And by having destroyed it, now we don't know we have any achievements, any accomplishments. And as long as you can be convinced that you never did anything, you can never do anything. This is why the white man, his little children, he tells them about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, all these white heroes. But we are never taught about any black hero. Only someone we're shown in history is my grandfather was picking cotton. Cotton picking don't move me. No. But when it comes to teaching the black people something about great black men who stood their ground, who were scientists, who were civilizers, who were fathers of culture and civilization, the white man has shrewdly written that role out of the textbook. And today, the effect that it has on you and me, we don't think we can stand on our own two feet. We wake up, we clean up, and we stand up. And once we can stand up like a man on our own feet, we stop begging the white man. And we stop apologizing to the white man. We stop compromising with the white man. Then the world will look at us with recognition and respect. But as long as you run around here wearing the white man's name, bragging about you one of the Jones, or one of the Browns, or one of the Smiths, or as long as you run around here bragging about your part in this so-called American democracy, then you will always be looked down upon as a chump by the white man. You never will be given recognition nor respect. Your problem will continue to go unsolved, and we'll still be in the same rut or ditch 1,000 years from now that we're in right now.
Welcome to a special edition of I Am. There goes Fred. Of I Am the Revolution. I'm your host for today. I am CJJ or Compton J. Any of those will work. Starting off, originally I had an MLK, of course, clip to start us off with, and just listen, waiting for the show to start, I was watching some MLK'S, and in that MLK'S clip was this section that I thought, oh, let's go ahead and start with Malcolm. So I thought, what he's saying in this clip to me is really a decolonized mind. So if things sound weird to you and what he's saying, it's about self-determination. That's really what he's talking about. Black people should have the ability of self-determination, and we do not. So that is a great clip from Malcolm. He is my favorite. Actually, no, Marcus Garvey and then Malcolm, but Marcus Garvey and Malcolm very close. Those are my favorite sort of revolutionary icons that I like, or not icons, but just ancestors that I like. So or I admire is a better way of putting it. So today we're going to be covering a unique topic. We have Martin Luther King birthday coming up in a couple of days, which happens to be Rome's birthday too, if you didn't know. So Rome, member, one of the founding members actually of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, has the same birthday. So his birthday is on Monday. MLK Day is on Monday. A lot of people talk about his I Have a Dream speech. That is on purpose, not by the people like us, but by the people who have put this in our head through education. If you didn't know, if you're here just kind of watching, you stumble upon us, and you don't know what RBN is about, then some of the things I'm going to say may be shocking to you, but Martin Luther King, the man, the myth, the legend, his history has been completely stripped down. has been completely stripped down. All the sort of revolutionary things have been stripped away, and this shell of a person. This is the reason why you only know of his "I have a dream" speech in school, when he has literally tens upon tens upon tens, hundreds of writings that you can read of his. So if he's such an icon that the United States like, why do we only know one story, two stories, a march, his killing? So we're right. Like, why do we only know this? Why do we only know these things? So he has been completely stripped down. And I am gonna visit a video I found, which happens to be a video like a racist person made, a racist group, I'm assuming, or a capitalist group. I shouldn't say racist, but in this context, even though they can be interchangeable in other contexts, this context is not. And he's bringing up the fact that Martin Luther King was a communist, and he has proof, as if, and maybe Martin Luther King did hide it, because at that time it was, not well received by Americans. So maybe he did, as a large figure, maybe tried to hide that he was. But this person in this video, and the reason I said racist, because I feel like he is racist in the video. I'm not saying the organization he belongs to, because I have no knowledge of it. So when we get to that video, it's a short video. He'll be saying a lot of bad stuff, but the evidence that he brings up is what I want to kind of cover in discovering if he was actually a communist. So that's going to be interesting to do today. I forgot that Rome's birthday is MLK's birthday. That's so cool. So is MLK's birthday the 16th? Or is that just the observing of it as a holiday? I can't remember if it's the 15th. Maybe it's the 15th. Martin Luther King, MLK, and Fred Hampton would be hated by most of society today. Absolutely. But when I'm not gonna say that. I was just about to give away something in the video, but I don't want to give it away because when I get to it, it's gonna be quite. I think it'll be amusing for some people. So, what we're gonna do today is cover a video by where they are. Oh, right here. Oh no, this is not the right video. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. Sorry, I was watching some Malcolm X videos, like I said. Here's the video we're gonna be, discussing today. So now this video was put out by AfroMarxist, the assassination of Martin Luther King. So some of you may have seen it. Some of you are communists and Marxists. Communists, Marxists, socialists, whatever label you have for yourself. So we're gonna be covering this. There's gonna be a lot of stopping and talking, kind of correlating it to now, because now we have the benefit of sort of hindsight of history. Like, this video, some of this history we're gonna be watching about the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. is, it's the 60s. So actually that's it. So what's unique about this is this video is it's talking not at all about the events of Martin Luther King Jr. and his assassination. It's discussing everyone who lived, their reaction, talking to different activists, different community leaders, organizers, and what they thought, their reaction. And what the great part of this video is towards the end, there's an interview where there's a lot of there's black leaders, the so-called black leaders, black organizers, but actual black leaders. And you can tell some are more liberal and some are more revolutionary. But that conversation, there's so much to take from. So that is very excited to get to that part of the conversation. So before we do that, we do have a shortened version of our announcements, because this is actually going into our series, I Am the Revolution. I hope I announced it that way. I can't even remember. But I Am the Revolution is this series. So on our YouTube channel, you'll see different rows. I think it's the second or third, maybe fourth row from the top. If you go directly to our page on YouTube, you'll see I Am the Revolution series. I haven't done one in a while. This is where this is going to go. Okay, so this is part of that series. Now, always have to shout out our Substack, just to make sure people are getting notifications when we go live, when we do clips. We put out 3 clips today. Shout out to Aaron, doing great work. And tomorrow there'll be 3 clips. So look for those tomorrow. But join our Substack and you'll get notifications when we drop those clips. The other thing is our website. Here is our website URL. Check it out if you want to just kind of check and see what some of the things we're going to be looking to do. It's still in construction. I would say it's about 85% done. There's still some tweaks, some errors that some of you have emailed in and told us about some errors that we have on the website. And thank you for that. So we'll be going over that. So here's the website here you can check out. That's Rome, by the way, cutting a unhoused person's hair. That's Nick on the left in the gray shirt, Rome in the middle, and Nick's brother on the far right. You can see things like chapters, the goals for our local chapters. Our local chapter launch, March 2023, is the tentative date. That could change. I'm going to be honest with you. You can see some of our summits, or all of our summits that we've had. Just click on the one you want to watch and all the videos are there. So check that out on your spare time. And then the last part of this announcement will be this, and that is our email. Stop using the Gmail that we used to use and use this email. We welcome all emails, but typically the ones we're going to respond to are more actionable, things that we're interested in. We do thank those that make topic suggestions, things like that. But those we may not necessarily reply to, because we simply don't have a person that's handling our email right now. So members just check here and there when we have time. All right. So that's the reason why it's kind of not takes a few days to get a response. All right. So that is it. I'll toss up a couple of your comments, because this stream is for those this is our more advanced level comrades in our community. I would say intermediate, maybe. Yeah, this is more intermediate. This is your intermediate level. Some of our content, most of our content, the eye candy content, it's just our basic level. Those that could be, drive-bys, people that just come in and see our content and then kind of leave. And then we have intermediate, where we're talking more about these types of things, studying history and stuff like that. And then I would say advanced will be the theory part, would be the advanced level. So I'll toss up some of your comments. Fred Hampton, yes. We'll be talking about him during the stream, actually, in part of the video. Yes, decolonize your mind. Decolonize your mind. Absolutely. Let's see what else. I thought I saw an RBN. Hey, Mr. Compton. What's up, sir? Fred Hampton Jr., Black Panther Party Cubs. Hindsight is key. And that's how we're going to be looking at this video. Our discussion here, yours and I, those in the comments, and mine, is more about how what they're saying has either come true or not come true, and how that can what is the right word? can kind of give us advice to what to do, or give us a footing to what to do, a way to go, sort of a map. All right, so thank you for the comments. I was just about to get started, but I forgot about the likes. Now, we want people to really know or see content like this. So if you're gonna like any stream, like these streams the most, give those like buttons, because these are the ones that are most important for those looky-loos, for those that came here for the electoral politics discussion that we do a lot of. Now we need to pull those electoral politics people over. And this is the intermediate part. We're talking about MLK. This is a pop culture kind of person. So let's draw them in, but we can only do that by you hitting that like button. So let's hit the like button if everybody can do that. We're at 74 likes, but 140 people watching. So let's just get all the way to 140. So let's get everybody to hit that like button, and we shall get started. All right. This is a pretty good video, so let's watch. We'll be stopping a lot. Just give me a heads up. Oop, did I have the sound down? Hold on a second. I do. And I had it down earlier for the Malcolm X video, so I might play that Malcolm X video again just in case you didn't hear it as good. Because I thought it was low, but I didn't want to interrupt the intro video. But let's listen.
If any of you around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. Every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I have a no.
So I'm going to say, this was originally the intro. So this would have originally been the intro, what we're watching now. Because this, I skipped past a part of this video. We didn't start from the beginning.
Nobel Peace Prize, that isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness.
I just fixing to walk out the door when a special bulletin flashed on the television that Dr. King had been shot. And I just stood there, you know, a long time. And then a little while later, they said Dr. King was dead. My anger was that of any other black person anywhere in the United States. The 4th of April, how could this happen to a man that had given his life for not just himself, but for his fellow man? And I was angry. And there's a whole lot of other people were angry that he was that nonviolent, but he had to die that violent.
Well, I said this about Dr. King. He had a good thing, good deal. I thought the whole world and a lot of it.
So the intro would have stopped right after she stopped speaking before we got to him. But I do see a couple of good comments I want to toss up here. The assassination of the man could only happen once, the physical man, that is. now his character is assassinated by the establishment annually. And right, what was the other one here? I don't think that's a true analysis. Calling MLK the white Western Christian approach to activism is giving white Western Christians way too much credit. Love that comment. But that's a direct quote from Miss Cleaver in the discussion. She's the only female in that roundtable that I told you I'm excited to get to. So that's a quote I took from her to put into the title. So great question. Here's a super chat. The assassination of the it's the same, but let's read it. Yeah, thank you for the super chat, Dwayne. Dwayne Vogel, that is. The assassination of the man could only happen once. Now his character is assassinated by the establishment annually. Yes, it's funny how I picked out your regular one, and then you sent it as a super chat, which I didn't see until the end. So, all right, so let's get back to the video. Let's get back to the video here.
And I hated that they stopped him like they did. And I just said I was just going to stick to a good deal of his problems. Now, he said it over and often that he would like to see the times that come when the children, black church children, sit down and play and eat together and do around. And I tried to carry that program out. And I'm still going to try to carry it out.
And when King came to Washington, King would not come to the grassroots part of Washington, say like a place like Anacostia, you know. He came out and talked to some white folks at St. Elizabeth, you know. I think that's the name of the church, St. Elizabeth. He came and he stayed 2 hours, talked to these, you know, middle-class people about financing this.
I should say, you're probably thinking like, what is this guy saying? Is he for King or is he against King? So I should say this video, it is from AfroMarxist. This video are black radicals to the left of Martin Luther King. We're going to be hearing a lot of them talk in this video. So you will hear critiques of Martin Luther King Jr. in this video. Not like the man, but like that his tactics was he soft. So you will hear that. I should have given you that trigger warning, or not. Maybe you know it already, but for those that may not, those that are just coming along and have gotten onto RBN through our electoral politics sort of questions or my discussions, but they're here for this Martin Luther King discussion today, and maybe hearing more radical things than they're used to hearing during some of our electoral politics discussion. So back to the video.
This program and left.
So in losing Dr. King, we lost a symbol and we lost substance. We lost a man that had taken us from black men with enlightened minds and tingling spinal cords to a new people who had the power to stand up in front of white people. I developing the power to confront dogs, to confront sheriffs, to confront jails, to confront death. All of this marrow in our bone came from Dr. King's leadership.
His personality and his image was that of a giant, somewhere between a giant and God. So that among the black nationalist camp, among the other black extremists like the Black Panthers or SNCC, or some people who would resort to violent measures, that the very existence of Dr. King held these people in check. It was to see whether or not he would come of age, whether or not he would join forces with us, ultimately, because we felt that he was sincere, and that as soon as it was shown to him that nonviolence was not practical, that he would change his stand, as he did in the Vietnam War.
For black folks, it has been a year marked both by increasing pressures and a growing sense of community. It was the year of Resurrection City and Richard Nixon, of the death of Robert Kennedy, and of the Kerner Report on white racism. There was school decentralization, the Olympic boycott, and the black psychological revolution. In 1968, we saw the eclipse of many older figures in the movement by the rise to the forefront of such younger leaders as Julian Bond and Huey P. Newton. As Black Journal crisscrossed the country, getting the views of Afro-Americans on these and other subjects, one fact became increasingly clear. To most of us, the single event that...
So picture this time frame where, as the narrator kind of alluded to, or even specifically said, ushering in of the new and sort of out of the old, when you have the Black Panthers, and that's not talking about, they're showing up to City Hall with guns. And you have Martin Luther King with his nonviolence. And that was sort of the older group at this time. You're going to see that on the panel when we get to Ms. Cleaver. So let's go. Let's get back to this.
Dwarfed all other...
Not this panel. There's this panel, and then there's another panel, but these two panels has the same have a couple of the same people on it, or that person. Two different panels have the same person on it, and when he gets to him, I'll show you.
Others in significance was the cold-blooded murder of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
The effect that I'm most aware of in the assassination of Dr. King was in the final and total rejection on the part of the establishment of Black people approaching the establishment on its own terms. And it was proven and made very clear to all Black people that this is something that would not work, that the rewards of Dr. King's very gracious and noble and Western, white, Christian approach to solving Black people's problems was rejected finally.
The only individual who had...
And there goes, you hear the title. You just heard it in what Ms. Cleaver said. So I do want to rewind back and kind of look at what she said again here. And kind of break down the point that she's making here. So let's listen.
Of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
The effect that I'm most aware of in the assassination of Dr. King was in the final and total rejection on the part of the establishment of Black people approaching the establishment on its own terms. And it was proven and made very clear to all Black people that this is something that would not work, that the rewards of Dr. King's very gracious and noble and Western, white, Christian approach to solving Black people's problems was rejected finally.
The only individual...
So I think what she's saying in this, or how I take what she's saying in this, is that she's saying that, I mean, she explicitly says that the assassination of MLK was the final nail in the coffin, if you look at it that way, or what's another analogy? I'm trying to give a softer analogy, but the only ones coming to my mind aren't as soft. But what she's saying is that with the assassination of MLK, that was the proof that this nonviolent march protest movement or way of trying to gain liberation for Black people wasn't going to work. So again, this episode is more examining what does it mean? What is the effects of MLK being assassinated? What does it prove that MLK has been assassinated? I think it's more of that is what they're answering, is talking about what does it prove? What does it mean? What does it translate into that he is now dead? And Do you think, this is just a question for the audience, do you think the people who were second in command, who saw the first in command just be shot, do you think that kind of switched up their strategies? Do you think so? I mean, that's a human question to have. So let's continue. I'll rewind so we can hear her again and then let it continue to play. So this point she makes is what we were discussing.
All others in significance was the cold-blooded murder of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
The effect that I'm most aware of in the assassination of Dr. King was in the final and total rejection on the part of the establishment of black people approaching the establishment on its own terms. And it was proven and made very clear to all black people that this is something that would not work, that the rewards of Dr. King's very gracious and noble and Western.
Yeah, so she's saying it, the Christian and all, and the white and all that. So she's saying it to say he did it your way, white Christian, Western Christian person. The way you said to gain freedom, to gain these things, these civil rights, he did it the white way, the Christian way. And look what he got. So that's obviously not the way to do it, is what she's saying. She was her takeaway from or one of her takeaways from the assassination of Martin Luther King. Let's continue.
White Christian approach to solving black people's problems was rejected finally.
The only individual who had stature enough and who was a recognized leader of the integration civil rights movement was Dr. King. When Dr. King, the growing experience, the reality of the under which black people were living had been shown clearly through the experiences of SCLC, that the effort at demonstrating and petitioning the white power structure had not succeeded in bringing about basic change in this country. So that when Dr. King was assassinated, it seemed to me that one of the most obscene things that was possible to happen did happen. That is, the same people who'd been calling Dr. King Martin Luther Coon all these years, on the night of his death, were embracing him, were embracing his philosophy, were saying that.
I'm gonna rewind his statement back. But isn't that what's happening now? Everybody's a Martin Luther King now. Everybody, his values are my values. These are the very same people that will be calling him out, that we calling them radical, that we calling them all types of things. And he's making the point too, like he's saying that he's looking at these politicians that were discussing of him now, all of a sudden preaching like now that he's dead, that somehow that his values were theirs, and it's disgusting. So let's rewind back to his part here. I'll give you his name also.
The only individual who had stature enough and who was a recognized leader of the integration civil rights movement was Dr. King. When Dr. King,
Bill Strickland,
the growing experience, the reality of the under which black people were living had been shown clearly through the experiences of SCLC, that the effort at demonstrating and petitioning the white power structure had not succeeded in bringing about basic change in this country. So that,
why don't we answer that question now? Does demonstrating bring about change? George Floyd was murdered. There was worldwide protests, and nothing has happened. Police are killed. Police just had a record killing year. 2022 was a record year for murders for the police. I'm gonna bring up that receipt. Let me see. Police 2022. Oops. Where is that? Anyway, I'll play the video, and when I find that, I will bring it up because it's key to put this receipt into this episode here.
When Dr. King was assassinated, it seemed to me that one of the most obscene things that was possible to happen did happen. That is, the same people who'd been calling Dr. King Martin Luther Coon all these years, on the night of his death, were embracing him. Were embracing his philosophy. Were saying that he represented them, and it's too bad he's gone, and we must carry on in the tradition that he exemplified. All they were concerned about was preserving their system. And the real nature of their concern.
You recognize him? I think it's Abernathy. He's the guy who took over SCLC, I believe, after. I think they're going to say it. So if any of this factual that I'm saying now, they're going to correct me in just a second. But yeah, that's him as a younger person. And in this video, he is the moderate. But let's listen.
Was proven when the Poor People's Campaign.
Actually, let me drop the receipt here. So the question being applying some of what there's being said in the video, does demonstration work? So George Floyd was murdered on video. Everybody saw it. He was convicted of something, and there was worldwide protests during a pandemic. During the height of the pandemic. And people out in the streets worldwide. What did that do? A record year of death. Who were the victims of police violence in the U.S. in 2022? So the question that's asked in the video is a question that could be asked now. Assassination is a win for us. The problem is that we went into hiding because, just like Bernie, we hero worship. The lesson is to copy and paste. So, and thank you for the super chat. Let me make sure. I need to keep it on this screen so that I can make sure I don't skip any. Is this another one here? Okay, here, yes. MLK's assassination proved non-violent civil disobedience will not change this system. It proves power concedes nothing without a fight. So I'm not sure if you were the first super. Where is it? Leon, I don't know if you were responding to the other one or not, or just making a statement. Because I read them out of order. I just wanted to say that. I did read them out of order. And then, oh, here goes another one from you. I scrolled up and saw another one from you. So here it goes. Assassination is proof that you are a threat, not proof that your strategy is effective. That is absolutely right. Don't we wish we had activists today that were that dangerous? Right. So, I mean, Fred Hampton, we can say too, Martin Luther King. Is that, I can't remember what episode or where, but part of what the ruling class doesn't want to have, and I don't know where I got it from. It could have been the CIA, something about the CIA I got it from, is to make sure there's not a messiah that's created. And they learned that with Martin Luther King. And they're going to talk about what Resurrection City is about, and how what he was doing right at the time of his murder. So I got that one too. I better scroll up to make sure I don't have any other super chats. I'm going to try to keep it on the screen as much as I can, besides doing all the producing here. So yeah, just a record. And I'll just read the first part. Now, this is after worldwide protest. Police in the United States killed at an unprecedented rate in 2022, taking the lives of at least 1,176 people for an average of 3.2 deaths every day, according to a year-end tally by Mapping Police Violence. And we had Mapping police violence, which is an organization, on. Nick just had them on. I think the founder or the president or the person that runs it, the director, just had him on for a discussion about that. So that number is actually a little higher. It's actually a little higher, 3.2, because that's just deaths by murders, but police can cause deaths by in other ways that should be tallied also. So, but anyway, let's not kind of divert the discussion. This is just a receipt for the main video that we're talking about, and the topic being the assassination of Malcolm X, and sort of like the surviving or the organizers and leaders that were still alive, some more radical, discussing the effects and what does his assassination mean.
Marshaled its forces and came to Washington, because the same people who a month previous had said that there are democratic processes by which change can be effected in the country, and what you need is to be nonviolent and to maintain the nonviolent tradition and come with your hat in your hand and beg white power structure to do the right thing. The response of the white power structure to that effort was guns and police and the destruction of the poor.
Think about that. Through your Constitution and other documents, you say this is the way to have your grievances redressed. This is what you say in your own system structure. And when you do that and nothing happens, what happens?
Poor People's Campaign.
The Poor People's Campaign, that was supposed to have been a landmark. It was supposed to have been a very important opportunity.
I never thought so. I felt that like Dan Watts, I was never a supporter of Dr. King's, and such marches, it seemed to me.
This is Julian Mayfield, says he's an actor.
Where you were going to appeal to a Congress which wouldn't even pass a rat bill. No, I couldn't. I didn't believe in it when it was first projected. And its failure proves to me that the United States, the white community in the United States, is not ready to give away anything. Whatever we get, we have to take.
Are you suggesting that the Poor People's Campaign had no impact whatsoever on the Congress?
Oh, it was a cruel hoax. All it basically did was to confirm to white America that they had been taking care of business. I mean, this is all it really was. To go tell the white establishment that they had been persecuting us, they know damn well what they've been doing all these years. So all we did really was to sort of run a kind of a survey to point out to them how effective they have been. And I think the time was long past.
So if you didn't know, he's one of those radical ones on the panel. And if you don't recognize his face, there is a video I played of him, and it's probably 20 to 25 years younger of him that I play, where he's just as radical. So I'll try to find that to insert this into this episode to make sure we have it. But yes, this is him just a little older for those that may recognize him.
Fast for these kind of real game playing.
Well, I think the most important event of 1968 was the Poor People.
I'm going to rewind what he says here.
People's Campaign had no impact whatsoever on the Congress?
Oh, it was a cruel hoax. All it basically did was to confirm to white America that they had been taking care of business. I mean, this is all it really was. To go tell the white establishment that you have been.
Who said his name? I forgot. That quick.
Rejected. And
Dan Watts. Sorry, Dan Watts is his name.
And I think the time is long past for these kind of real game playing.
Well, I think the most important event of 1968 was the Poor People's Campaign.
Hosea Williams.
Specifically Resurrection City. The Poor People's Campaign forced America to make poverty an acceptable living reality in this country.
So the Poor People's Campaign which is what MLK was working on at the time of his death, wanted to set up in national park. What is it? The national park, whatever it's called. I don't know the full name. Resurrection City. It's like on part of national park. And this is when he got murdered. So I'll let the video give more details. But yeah, let's get back, and I'll find that other receipt of Dan Watts there.
Well, I looked upon it as a lobbying technique. Also, more importantly, perhaps than anything else, and I thought it was one of the good ideas to come from Dr. King, because here you had masses of people, you know, not just an individual or a personality, that simply, although no disrespect to the Vice President-elect of the United States, Spiro Agnew, who said, if you've seen one ghetto, you've seen them all. Dr. King had representatives from the ghettos throughout the United States, nationalities, creed, colors, religions, etc., and took all of these people to Washington and put up what I would like to call a prototype ghetto. Now, this could have saved the taxpayers a lot of money. You didn't have to send the congressman running all over the United States to look at ghettos. Just like old Agnew. You just send them down to Resurrection City. And if you've seen this one ghetto, truly you would have seen most of the ghettos of the United States. And I think to that extent, I consider it successful, although most people said it was a failure because of the things that happened in Resurrection City. But muddy streets in Resurrection City was typical of muddy streets and ghettos throughout the United States. Cops coming in and tear gassing people in the night who were asleep. Some of this happens in the ghetto. People being beaten and robbed. Some of this happens in the ghetto. People who did not have 3 good meals a day. This happens in the ghetto. People who were idle. This happens in the ghetto. Virtually everything that went on in Resurrection City went on in the ghettos of the United States of America. And if Congress had just simply not turned its back and had not ignored Resurrection City, much good could have come out of it.
Of course, we had the assassination of Martin Luther King. We had the failure, I call it a failure. I didn't agree with it in the beginning of Resurrection City, the Mule Train March on Washington, Poor People's March. These things prove that black people had to develop a new way of thinking, a way of thinking that I've always believed in, which is that it's really money and power.
I think that in depth what the significance of Resurrection City was to the black people in America today was
Claude Brown.
Look, the dream is gone. You see, Dr. King had a certain air about him, a certain mystical air, that people for years believed that all they'd have to do is follow him down the street peacefully, and somehow we were going to get rights, you know, in a magical fashion.
I don't know if you hear the sarcasm, but I mean, that's what they tell people. This is how you redress your grievances. We're, you know, democracy. We listen to the people. But that hasn't happened, and I think that was proof, also proven that it still hasn't happened even today with the George Floyd killing, like I said earlier, and the worldwide march, and nothing has happened, and killings by these people have gone up. 2022 was a record year. So back again to the video.
And I think that once he was no longer there, and the people could see what was happening in a detached fashion, that is detached from King, even though you couldn't say it was completely detached because his spirit was still there, but the man was no longer there. His charisma was no longer there. He was no longer able to hoodwink people with outstanding oratory. They had to look at the facts, and everybody, I think for the first time.
So you heard him say hoodwink. So obviously, Claude does not agree with this approach. So these are radicals. Now they're going to get to some of more centrists in a second, but these are the radicals during that time.
Since beginning to follow Dr. King, realized that the whole era was over.
I think the era was over in 1963 at that picnic called the March on Washington.
I question how much hold Dr. King.
Yeah, these are the more radical ones. So it feels like, this is what I didn't want to spoil earlier. It feels like if we were in a discussion right now, or even then, RBN would be the people that would be kind of have a little bit of critique for MLK. It wouldn't be to the extent of the progressive Democrats, because he was a socialist. He was talking about anti-war. He was talking about anti-capitalism. So he was talking about that. The peaceful part may have been different. I'm not going to say that's what we're saying now. I'm just saying it feels like because we are more radical than some of the left today, even black left, that Black Power Media is also more radical. That we probably would be more radical of in the discussion during that time is what I could imagine.
I think he was very largely supported by whites, because one must ask the question, where were all of the black people during all of Dr. King's operations? One would have thought that after his death, there would have been many millions of people marching to Washington to beg Congress for some respite from oppression. But no, they took to the streets for many reasons immediately after his death. And I think the main reason was because even those of us who disagreed with Dr. King felt that symbolically we had been shot too.
We are underestimating the significance of the poverty program, the march, which Martin Luther King was slated to lead immediately prior to his assassination.
So understand, immediately prior, like to his assassination, he was the one that was supposed to lead this. Think about it. Keep that in your mind.
A new dimension, which was being added to the whole campaign led by Martin Luther King. Moreover, I don't agree that, while I don't agree with all of his philosophy, still, to me, it is clear that Dr. King moved more Afro-Americans into challenge against their oppression than any other figure in this period. And at that moment, he was about to add millions of poor Euro-American people, which represented the kind of challenge to the...
Now, think about that. He over here talking about getting some civil rights. Yeah, nigga, that's fine. As long as you stay in your place. Now you talking about teaming up with some white poor people? Oh no, this guy got to be taken out. So let me rewind what this gentleman says here. So let's listen to what he says here.
We are underestimating the significance of the poverty program, the march, which Martin Luther King was slated to lead immediately prior to his assassination. This represented a new dimension, which was being added to the whole campaign led by Martin Luther King. Moreover, I don't agree that, while I don't agree with all of his philosophy, still, to me, it is clear that Dr. King moved more Afro-Americans into challenge against their oppression than any other figure in this period. And at that moment, he was about to add millions of poor Euro-American people, which represented the kind of challenge to the power structure which they couldn't take. And so he had to be removed and was removed because that movement was becoming a mass movement, including Euro-Americans and Afro-Americans, which actually would put the axe at the root of the system dominated by the power structure.
Well, let's, for the sake of discussion, assume that what you've said is true. What has happened to this movement? I mean, was it all in the, in the mind of Reverend King, or was it a genuine people's movement that the only thing it lacked was some direction? What I'm trying to get at, was it once again the kind of, where we depend always upon the one man to move history, or was it a genuine people's movement? What has happened to the movement?
Dan White's is a real one, and I'm going to show you that a younger version of Dan Watts here. And this is one of the videos I would start, introduction, be the intro videos to episodes.
Let me put it to you this way. We are proud of being black and of our black heritage, but white America does not accept the concept that this is a multiracial society. It has never accepted the fact that there are black people, brown people, yellow people here alongside them. They've always looked upon America as being white, and hence all of its propaganda is directed at us to convince us that somehow or the other we must become white before they will accept us. Even a publication like Ebony, with a subscription of something like 800,000 Negro subscribers, is written for what we call the low visibility Negro, the light-skinned Negro. With a rare exception, Ebony never features the activities of the black man in this country. It's always that low visibility, the almost white Negro, and how you too can be this way one day if you use some of the skin lighteners that they run in their advertisement. I mean, when it runs ads like Dr. Fred Palmer's skin whiteners, it is denial of the fact that black people exist, that somehow or the other, in order for us to exist, we must resort to using hair straighteners so our hair won't be kinky, that somehow if we could only hide our blackness, we can then become part of this thing called the American melting pot, or the American.
So that is Dan there, kind of giving a critique to some of what he referred to as like milquetoast sort of black publications, and he pointed it out in his video. So you see, he still has the more radical view.
Unquestionably, the movement was set back, and precisely because the assassination of King was calculated to set it back, smite the shepherd and scatter the sheep.
In fact, demonstrations, as we see them, are propaganda tool for mobilizing power. Now, we did the propaganda thing. We failed to mobilize sufficient power. But you don't knock out. I mean, we jumped the United States government. Russia's scared to do that. China doesn't have the forces to do that yet. So the very fact that some poor black people would dare to come there and confront this military.
So this is Reverend Andrew Young. I thought this was I thought his name was Abernathy for some reason. Or is that the name of that guy?
Industrial complex and say you got to start pouring some money into us instead of into Vietnams and places like this was in itself significant. Now I think we face the task of continuing that national mobilization, of which I think all of the black consciousness at every level in the society is an important part. And that these next years I see us mobilizing the power within our communities and the allies we can mobilize outside of the communities to bring about the changes asked for in the Poor People's Campaign.
How about the pouring of funds? Excuse me, Kathleen, you mentioned pouring funds. The poor people, then you got poverty programs. And you start pouring money into something. I mean, are these poverty programs, have they been of any worth to black people, or are they just...
Let's deal with something more relevant than poverty programs. Right. I'd like to talk about also this effect of the assassination Poverty programs are a tool of the government for doing something they want done. They don't have anything to do with the lives of black people, and that's been recognized.
There's an old African proverb: before we can cure the disease, we must first diagnose it. And the disease is racism. Poverty is just one aspect of racism. Dr. King was not poor. He was killed. Muhammad Ali was not poor. He was deposed. Adam Clayton Powell was not poor. Nigger is not an economic condition. It's not an economic identity. It's a racial identity. Racism is our problem. Poverty is simply one aspect of it.
2 days after Dr. King was assassinated in Birmingham, Bobby Hutton was murdered in Oakland. Eldridge Cleaver was wounded in a battle with the Oakland police. And while much has been made of Dr. King's assassination, the information concerning Bobby Hutton's assassination, who was the first person to join the Black Panther Party, has been suppressed. But this is where it's at in terms of the young black people moving. You see, the response to Dr. King's assassination was not something that he himself would have advocated, but this is the move that the young black people would make. It was spontaneous, but it was not what you call nonviolent. It was not a passive response. And people all over the country turned to another form of leadership. And I think that the leadership represented by the Black Panther Party is the only viable leadership that will get something done left to black people. I'm not saying the Black Panther Party leadership per se. I'm talking about
the types of things that they politically, economically,
ideological, and revolutionary leadership. One of our basic premises is that political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. And this has been taken up by the young warriors, the young men in the community across the colony, across this country.
Man, I mean, she's speaking some of the more radical stuff that we are hearing in this chat. Wow. I wonder why you can find more footage on her than Eldridge. I wonder why you can find, because I can't. I mean, there's footage. I'm not gonna say I can't find any, but there's a lot more you can see. And I've posted videos of her, slightly younger than she is here, talking about black people loving themselves and their afro and going natural. One of the videos I played, but just curious to understand why I find a lot of content of Kathleen, but I don't find a lot of content of Eldridge. Curious.
And I think everyone has to recognize that whatever changes are going to be made in this country for black people in the coming years are going to be made by young people. And the young people in this country are responding to the Black Panther Party. It's growing vastly all across this country. This is a force that's going to have to be dealt with.
So no sooner the sun went down.
And it was dealt with. They murdered Fred Hampton.
The officials came through the black community shooting. So we had no other alternative but to pick up what we had and fire back. And after doing all of that, now I think Prattville is one of the best towns in Alabama. You can go through without any trouble. Go any place in Prattville that you want to without any trouble.
I never heard of a sit-in revolution. The only type of revolutions I've known about or read about have been bloody revolutions.
So again, like I said earlier, this video is of more radical people to the left of Martin Luther King who are talking about or are speaking in this video after his death. And the critique here is obvious that what revolution, I've never heard of a sit-in revolution is the point that they're making. Yeah. Oh, let me put get back to the comments. I'm going to scroll through and see if anybody left the super chat because I haven't had the comments up for a little bit. I've never heard of a sit-in revolution. Sounds familiar. Some message still resonates today even more. That is factual. Let me make sure I don't have any super chats here. Yes, Black Panthers. Yeah, that's the question I always say. The 60s had way better political discussion. Even the 80s, those Sister Soldier videos that I play on Donahue would have this type of political discussion all the time. He had Louis Farrakhan on there. He had other different Muslim, like just these types of conversation. Even the 80s was better than now. But if you go even further back, look at this. Some of these discussions we're seeing on TV, in this video here. So let's continue the video.
Examples: the Russian Revolution, the Revolutionary War, where one man said, "Give me liberty," or "Give me death."
Violence has a way of being very healthy and functional for the development of the society. By that I mean it's frequently in times of the peak violence where the society can take that next major important step, like Cleveland. Black people now must patrol their communities.
I think black people are as sympathetic to the nonviolent approach as they have been before. They have become much more impatient. But as far as their sympathy and their concern for nonviolence, by nature, black people are nonviolent. Just like by nature, white people are violent, because this is something, as an instrument, they have used through centuries to bring about change, where black people have done just the opposite.
We're still going to have to participate to some degree in the electoral process, because you can't tell people that the electoral process is fraudulent if they haven't, say, participated in that to some degree. So that we see ourselves waging more or less two battles. We see ourselves waging a battle in the streets. We see ourselves waging a battle through the electoral process, in order to very neatly sharpen the contradictions in society.
Well, we're in a position now, whereas we have a lot on the white man, we're in a position where we can hurt him. And we're going to hurt him. We have to. And I think more so he realizes that we can hurt him. And this is scaring him half to death, which is another good thing. And I think it's time to fight. Whatever you believe in, it's just time to fight.
Oh, my definition of black...
That guy sound like Rome to me. That last guy sound like Rome almost.
Power, or any kind of power in terms of regulating or controlling one's own destiny, or the destiny of a community of people, or a nation of people, or the world, is the ability to kill. The ability to kill.
I have some difficulty, however, in shifting totally to the philosophy that the answer is in the barrel of a gun. That gives me great difficulty. I would say this, that if we reach the point at which Patrick Henry and George Washington and our other national heroes apparently reached, that there is no other answer except force and violence, then there may be an answer here which has to be looked at by anybody who is not a religious pacifist. And there are many people who are pacifists. I would not characterize the nonviolent approach as a cowardly approach or a subservient approach. I think it requires great courage to do the kinds of things that Dr. King did and the people who worked with him. It seems to me, however, that there is a change in strategy that is called for by the events of 1968. And I don't believe it necessarily calls for the, at least at this point, maybe I'll come to it later, but I am not at the point where I believe it calls for guns and ammunition. I think what it calls for is the mobilization of the power that is present in the black community. And I'm thinking particularly about political power, as you suggest, and I'm thinking about economic power, and I'm thinking about psychological power, and I'm thinking about black pride, and I'm thinking about coalitions and the development and strengthening of allies and alliances. And I'm not quite ready to give up completely the possibility of any solution other than going out into the streets and becoming a part of a violent struggle.
Well, do you feel that just because the statements made that political power is out of a barrel of a gun, that this means necessarily streets?
One thing I'd like to say about this whole question of violence that's been bandied around, should be made very clear that in the Black Panther Party and among all black people, it's not a question of violence, aggressive violence. This is what people mostly think of. It's a question of defending ourselves and our people against the violence that's being waged upon us and has been waged upon us for the past 400 years, a war of aggression. is going on against black people, not only on the level of guns, but on the level of housing, on the level of education, on the level of food, on every level of the society. There's aggression, there's hostility.
We have to stop thinking about violence, physical violence. Is it violent that I can't pay rent? Is it violent that we don't have money to buy food? Like it's yeah, so it's the same notion of any oppressor. They want to oppress you without fighting back, and when you fight back, you are the violent one. We see that time and time again. So let's continue.
Suppression and violence directed against black people. The program of the Black Panther Party, originally started as the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, is to move to defend and protect black people against this violence so that we can move to organize black people into a sufficient power to obtain our needs. One thing, back to what we were talking about earlier, about the assassination of Dr. King. I think it should be viewed in its context. It's very clear to me that this was something that was planned. You take the month of April. On April 1st, President Johnson announced that he wasn't going to run again for office. And this was a profound shock that went around the whole world. Everyone was sort of caught off balance. On April 4th, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Another shock. People were juggled around. They didn't know exactly what was going on. On April 6th, there's an eruption in Oakland, which is the hottest spot in terms of the black movement, in which the Minister of Information, Eldridge Cleaver, was almost assassinated.
I do think that the black man, within a very few years, will build up his own political party.
So this is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and if you've ever heard Malcolm X speak, and he says, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, this is the person, what he looks like, this is the person that he's referring to.
The politics of this world is made by the white man. You don't have any yourself. The white man makes all his politics. Then he teaches our people those laws or politics in which he has planned and devised himself. And there is so much crookedness in the white man's politics that you cannot win with his politics.
There's so much crookedness in the white man's politics that you cannot win with the white man's politics. This is the very thing we're telling the NATO left, the milquetoast left, the what's the I guess you can call them bootlicker left, the reformist left. The system is so corrupt, you can't get the changes you want from these corrupt people who make the system and the rules. Let's continue.
The question is, are we not in the American economy more and more an obsolete people? They do not need our labor anymore. The fact of the matter is they don't need the labor of most white people, but the message hasn't reached them yet. It ought to have reached us because we are more and more unemployed. And aren't we really talking about, isn't the basic question that faces us, that faces the nation, the whites, the basic question is, what do you do with the people that you don't need anymore? I know what they've done with them throughout history. And that's one question. And then the second question for the black people, or those who are attempting to map out strategy of struggle, is, do you continue to work within the system that has neglected you and oppressed you and repressed you for 300 years, or do you attempt to change that system? And by change, I mean eliminate it, overthrow it. What do you do? I mean, this is a question I would throw out.
Well, it seems to me that we have to do both things. We have to work
within it, and then,
within the framework of the
overthrow
system,
it.
and we have to work for its complete change, its basic.
Is that possible? because I stopped it here because somebody else is going to interject here. We must work within it and work to destroy it. Isn't that what some progressives are claiming they're attempting to do? How is that going? So let's listen to what he says here. I'm going to rewind it just a second and then listen to anybody who interject. I think it's Dan Watts. Him here. He got his hand over his mouth like he's ready to get busy with something. So let's listen.
300 years, or do you attempt to change that system? And by change, I mean eliminate it, overthrow it. What do you do? I mean, this is a question I would throw out.
Well, it seems to me that we have to do both things. We have to work
within it and then
within the framework of the system,
it.
and we have to work for its complete change, its basic change.
It seems like a contradiction to me, Mr. Moore, because one of the first lines of defense of any system is to perpetuate itself, and it certainly is not going to allow us to, quote, infiltrate it, and then, presumably get into a position where we can weaken it. I think...
Isn't that precisely what the progressive... I know I'm interjecting another topic here, but isn't that precisely what progressive Democrats want us to do? Get within the Democratic Party and change it? But it's the same logic that... the same questioning of that logic. This is the same sort of point that Dan Watts is going to make here. So let's listen to Dan Watts again.
Basic change.
It seems like a contradiction to me, Mr. Moore, because one of the first lines of defense of any system is to perpetuate itself, and it certainly is.
Isn't one of the first lines of the defense to keep the Democratic Party going? So why would they just let in somebody in who could overthrow that and change everything about it? So it's the same point. I'm just taking you to his logic here.
It's not going to allow us to, quote, infiltrate it and then, presumably get into a position where we can weaken it. I think that Julian has probably hit on the crux of the matter. Basically, that approximately 25 million Americans of African descent are obsolete in terms of the demands of technology of this country.
But I think you are looking at this question not from the viewpoint of the Afro-American, but from the viewpoint of the European-American system of oppression. When you say, what do we do with people who are no longer employable or who are obsolete? It isn't a question of what do we do with them. It's a question of what we will do with ourselves.
That's what we're talking about.
Just a minute.
No. Wait a minute.
And what we will do with ourselves involves this organization to get as much power as we can, and to get the means of changing this.
But Mr. Moore, all I am asking is that we be clear about this. I think there is a contradiction. You can't talk about getting as much power as you can by working within a legislature. Let's say any state, any of the 50 states. How much energy do we have? How much unity do we have? Look at the unity that is demonstrated around this table here.
The energy part is my question, because I'm beginning to have the opinion of when people say, oh, we got to do both. We got to put all our, use all our pathways. Really? Really? In the same way, think about it this way. I'm going to give you an analogy. In the same way that the United States is going after 2 nuclear powers, aren't they stretching themselves thin? So it's almost coming to be my belief that being so engaged in electoral politics actually prevents you from doing the outside game. Being so invested. I'm not talking about just showing up on the day to vote and picking a person. I'm talking about being so invested where you're trying, you're worried about this and getting this. If you're doing that, when are you going to have the time to feed the community? When are you going to have time to help meet the material needs of the community so everybody can organize then? You're out campaigning for electoral politics. So anyway, that's the point, the side point I want to make. And let's get back to the discussion.
We don't have enough power to do all of these things at once. And it seems to me that there is such a basic contradiction that we ought to address ourselves to it. Working within the system, it seems to me to mean that you're going to waste years and years and generations because those who are the most articulate will get better jobs and whatnot. They move out of contact with the community. Another hot young men come along, and the same process follows. And
is that not what happened to the Black community and happening into other communities too? Yeah, I'm not sure about electoral
what we're talking about really
by
is
offers of prizes from the establishment. Now, you see, when you talk about
not in the way of red blue. I should make that clear. When I say not sure about electoral politics, I mean not in the way of red blue. Any electoral politics participation has to be third party, has to be challenging the red blue structure.
Economics and economic power, we could never work within the system and at the same time overthrow the system economically or politically, because like when you refer to places like in Africa, like Mozambique, Angola, South Africa, where there's still colonialism going on, you take a giant, a financial giant like Chase Manhattan, they can do what they want in South Africa. In this country,
and then
blacks
offer you scholarships.
Yeah, that's right.
At the same time.
And the Ford Foundation can do the same thing. They buy out the whole revolution every time blacks get ready to talk about a revolution. Now, if blacks had the power, you'd like to say what we can do economically is start a fund whereby we could help all those people in Africa. Now, we could do this, providing we had the gigantic financial strength of a Chase Manhattan Bank, whereby we could say, look, Chase Manhattan Bank, you pull out of South Africa, or else we're going to have like 10 gigantic corporations stop doing business with you in the United States. But we can't do that. They can laugh and say, yeah, well, look, let's give some more money through the Ford Foundation to the Black Revolution here, and we can keep on doing whatever we want.
Again,
and so they still have their hands on everything.
You
and
are
first of all,
overestimating.
You'd have to get an economic base here in this country before you could do that, right?
The fact that without the existence of the United States as it is today, there would be no white South African regime. Most of the reactionary governments, regimes around the world are supported by the United States, so that we could send.
And that's still today. The fascist governments all around the world are supported by the United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel. I love what this guy is saying here, and I didn't hear about him until I think it was another video on there. But
Foundation to the Black
fairly new to this person.
Revolution here, and we can keep on doing whatever we want.
Again,
and so they still have their hands on everything.
You
and
are
first of all,
overestimating.
You'd have to get an economic base here in this country before you could do that, right?
The fact that without the existence of the United States as it is today, there would be no white South African regime. Most of the reactionary governments, regimes around the world are supported by the United States, so that we could send as much money as we wanted to the freedom fighters in a place like Portugal, the poorest country in Europe, which controls a territory 36 times its size. How could Portugal continue to do this without the support of the United States government? What the statement I'm trying to make is this, that none of those countries will achieve freedom until this system here in the United States is overthrown, until it is changed.
I don't agree, because your whole position sums up to an overestimation of the power of the people who now dominate and control the United States. I grant that it's considerable. It's massive. It's massive. But when you magnify it, as you do, then you remove all possibility of doing anything. And I'm not for doing nothing.
Well, you think it's
just a minute, gentlemen. I am for beginning where we are, and we certainly are within this system. So that begin to do anything about it means that we begin within it.
Suggesting now we should infiltrate the power structure and somehow or the other get our claws on it.
I'm not talking about infiltrating the power structure. Again, you are dominated by the power structure. I am saying that we should organize to fight against the power structure.
But you're saying join the power structure in order to organize against
No, I'm not saying that at all. Not at all.
No, that's not really what's happening.
Not
What's
at all.
actually happening is that the power structure is joining the minorities, the disenfranchised minority, to help fight themselves. You know, and this is one of the most beautiful gimmicks.
You were under an
the power structure is joining us. You ever heard of Bacardi Sellers? Don Lemon? They're joining us to get us to turn to go against our own interests by voting for the Democratic Party.
No, that's what are you talking about? Look around you. The government, the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, everybody's sponsoring the Black Revolution.
They are not sponsoring any Black Revolution.
Do you deny, Mr. Moore, do you deny that one of the basic tenets of any revolution is that once the class, any class, regardless of how low they've been, once they assume power, they become the leading class?
They want
in that
you
society,
to think that there is or has been a Black revolution so that they can continue to maintain power. And they are seeking, of course, to buy off those that they can. But it is my judgment, since I believe in man, that they will not succeed altogether, and that there will be a remnant, a force that has not
It's like he just believes it. It's just vibes.
The need to bail out. And will lead the people in a revolutionary struggle to change this entire system.
There's been a remnant of Christianity in the Western world for the past 2,000 years, and it hasn't changed.
And if you think this is mythical, I tell you that great movements have always been motivated by some powerful myth.
Gentlemen, seem to be waiting for the coming of a new Christ.
Yes.
No.
Gentlemen,
no.
May I just
you can call it that if you wish.
May I just inject a thought here? With all of this discussion. You're Mr. Greaves, aren't you? Yes, I seem to have
come to the top of the mountain with us, sir, and look into the promised land.
Exactly.
Nothing like it.
That didn't work.
I was wondering whether or not all of you were talking of variations on the theme of revolution, and I was wondering how would this impulse toward separatism fit in with this revolutionary quest? Because it seems to me that one seems to be excluding the other, or does it?
I'd like to make a comment about what Mr. Allen just said about nonviolence. He said it's not, we have never taken any position that nonviolence was either cowardly or, what was that other thing?
Subservient.
Subservient. That's not even the issue. What is at issue is, does it work? Nonviolence is a very
So that's the question. The issue is not whether nonviolence is weak. Has it worked? Is it working? Has it worked? And this is one of the things, like I said, we could see with hindsight or with history. We're talking 40, maybe 50 to 60 years between now and this video. Has it worked? It's a question for the chat, and I'll continue the video.
non-functional approach in a society that's based entirely.
Let me rewind, because we'll miss the point if I don't rewind it a little bit.
And I was wondering how would this impulse toward separatism fit in with this revolutionary quest? Because it seems to me that one seems to be excluding the other, or does it?
I'd like to make a comment about what Mr. Allen just said about nonviolence. He said it's not, we have never taken any position that nonviolence was either cowardly or, what was that other thing?
Subservient.
Subservient. That's not even the issue. What is at issue is, does it work? Nonviolence is a very non-functional approach in a society that's based entirely on organized force and violence. A country was created in violence, land was taken in violence, society that's perpetuating itself through violence in the ghettos, in Vietnam, in Africa, wherever you look. There's organized force and violence at work to maintain the society. So whether the solution is organized force and violence is a secondary question. The question is, what is the problem? And the problem is organized force and violence. And one of the things that's very clear about the philosophy of the Black Panther Party and Huey P. Newton is the statement that there's a world of difference between 20 million unarmed people and 20 million people organized and armed to the gills. That's power right there.
That's your First Amendment.
But that's power.
Let me get back to nonviolence. So,
that's their First Amendment.
You heard him say that's their First Amendment? So they knew this back then. First Amendment ain't for black people. That's not for us. That's not for us. So I'm going to rewind a second here.
That's power right there.
That's your First Amendment.
So she's saying 20 million people is one thing, but 20 million people armed to the T, that's power. Sort of love that. So let's play. Oop. Go back too far. 1 second, everybody. Okay, here it goes. Right here. I think this was it.
Clear about the philosophy of the Black Panther Party and Huey P. Newton is the statement that there's a world of difference between 20 million unarmed people and 20 million people organized and armed to the gills. That's power right there.
That's your First Amendment.
But
that's power.
Let me get back to nonviolence. So,
that's their First Amendment.
I think,
yeah. You know, the only thing I want to say, I don't like to reduce a thing to either or, because with black people, it's a question of both and not either bullets or ballots. You know, it's a wise use of whatever is necessary. You
By
know,
any means necessary.
Yeah, you see the opposition you're up against. You know, that's the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Sheriff, the FBI, the CIA. So when you're looking at total opposition,
that's what we're
and
up
I think
against.
and I think that in each instance when black people have to get.
The ruling class absolutely sees a general strike as violence. Was it the Starbucks CEO? When they were unionizing, he said, this assault, which is a word typically used to describe physical violence, this assault on Starbucks, because they're unionizing. So absolutely the ruling class would take a general strike as violence. And so the question, so I'll read what it says here. Is a general strike violence? The crackdown will be prepare to defend yourselves. The crackdown will be because they do believe it to be violence.
Get themselves together. And you have to work out your kind of program and see in which direction you're going to move. If the time comes when politics is a thing that can help you advance your cause, then black people should get to the ballot and they should use the ballot box, you know, and put black people in position, and then they should use the power. I say when that occasion arises.
Well, wait a minute.
We have black people in positions now. So again, hindsight 2020, let's apply it here from Obama to, what's her name? The vice president is Kamala, to Stacey Abrams, to Hakeem Jeffries, to John Lewis, to all the black people in the Black Caucus. What has that done?
Black people used the ballot box in untold numbers in 1968, and Nixon sitting in the White House.
What we've got to say, though, is that there's no one solution. There's no, I mean,
I'm not saying there's no one solution. I'm saying there's some things that are non-functional.
You had a 40, 50-year violent struggle in China. You had, I mean, there's no one quick answer. Now, I think part of what I feel here is that we really haven't understood the nature of our plight yet.
I think some people haven't.
No, what is the power based on?
So it gets a little contentious here because, like I said, he is the centrist in this group. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I doubt if I'm gonna play another 10 minutes of the video. Yeah. Anyway, let's see how far we get. And
see, I think the reason we centered in the South is this whole big military-industrial complex you talk about is the enemy. And that is resting on the power of about a half a dozen Southern senators and congressmen that virtually control your committees in the Congress, and you don't.
So him as a centrist is connecting some of the changes that others are saying they want to how it can be fixed through electoralism. That's what he's doing here.
Don't break that power by shooting a cop. So you break that power at its source with Richard Russell, Talmadge, Eastland, Stennis.
The Democrats are funding the police state. The Democrats are funding the police state as we come out of a year of the most murders on record in the United States by the police. Where people are being murdered in blue cities, where the mayor is a Democrat, where the mayor is a black person, where the mayor is a person of color. So we have hindsight to examine part of this discussion here, where it's like, what are you talking about? We have what you're saying, and that doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Because all they do, the ruling class adjust. You want to see black faces in there? Here's one. His name is Obama. And he was one of the most milquetoast non-black person I've ever seen. And as Margaret Kimberly, I remember in an interview, she said he didn't even interact with black people or black men specifically until he was like 18. And Cornel West, his family said that he has a problem with the strong black male, Obama. So that didn't help.
Mendel Rivers in South Carolina, the Byrds, those are the people that keep the lid on, that control the military contracts, see, that spend 2/3 of our federal budget on oppression around the world. Now, if violence is the tool, then it ought to be directed in the direction of the enemy. Now, the poor cop on the beat is just another tool. Now, one more thing. Even the poverty programs, see, North and South are quite different. And that's why I think we've got to look carefully at them. In Mississippi, the Child Development Group, that was survival for those black people. They took the poverty program in their own hands, and they developed a network that really helped them to survive.
So in his speech here, or in the section here where he speaks, he talks about, he's trying to make the point that, listen, there's 12 senators here that's stopping this, any sort of legislation. There's this and this. All we need is to get these people in positions of power. So this is pre-Kamala Obama and all of the elected black people, the Tim Scotts. So he's saying, all we need is to get them in. It'll be okay. They're in. And they're in the Democratic Party. So let me show you this headline here. Democrats fund Ukraine war at the expense of American workers. Jamal Bowman voted for it, the funding. Cori Bush. So we have black people in these positions. What are they doing? So let's go back to the video. Let's see. Maybe we'll finish it up. And it is raining a lot here in California. Wife doesn't like the rain, but yeah, it's raining a lot, and it's been raining all day here. Everybody's been stuck in the house, so they want me to get off and so they can use the gaming system.
In the most vicious system
So
of racism.
let's see if we can get through the rest of this video. I think it's less than 10 minutes, maybe not, but we we'll see where it ends here.
But then the funds were taken away.
But they got them back.
Right, but they weren't in control.
Right,
not really.
no, they're in control now, and they're in control in Alabama. I'm saying there's never going to be a time when you're totally in control.
Why
Life
not?
is a constant struggle.
You hear what he said? You hear what the centrist says? We have to constantly, life is about always constantly fighting for our rights, for freedom and liberation, constantly fighting. against the police state is supposed to be a constant state of that.
I don't see why black people.
And that's why you see her reaction to when he said that. So let's go back a little bit.
Program in their own hands, and they developed a network that really helped them to survive in the most vicious system of racism.
But then the funds were taken away.
But they got them back.
Right, but they weren't in control.
Right,
not really.
No, they're in control now, and they're in control
really?
in Alabama. I'm saying there's never going to be a time when you're totally in control.
Why
Life
not?
Is a constant.
That's a decolonized mind. Hearing a question of, I almost can't even believe the question. What do you mean there's never going to be a state where I'm in control of my own life, of our own lives as people? So she go, what the fuck, what are you talking about? Is her basic reaction here.
And struggle.
I don't see why black people can't be totally in control of their destiny.
Oh, only if you struggle and fight for it.
Well, that's what it's all about.
But you got to fight with your head as well as with your fist or with your gun.
Well, maybe, I think that all wars involve fighting on every level.
That's
you see,
right.
Politics is warfare without bloodshed, and warfare is politics with bloodshed.
Yeah.
I'm quoting Huey Newton and Mao Zedong and Ho Chi Minh.
Well, let's put it this way. If that's the case, then if we're
in
looking...
the English language.
If we're looking at the...
One more thing.
All right, well, go ahead.
I would say that when we begin to organize and educate our people so that we say to this military-industrial establishment that, all right, your economy is based on steel, automobile industry is the biggest consumer of steel, we're going to hit you at the heart of the economy, and come 1970, no 1970 car rolls in the ghetto. And then you will be, then that's the kind of power that they can't counteract simply by beating up a few people or assassinating a few people or putting them in jail.
What you're saying is that you don't have a single weapon, but you're constantly on the lookout for leverage, and wherever you find it, you have to use it.
It seems to me that there ought to be possible to identify a number of areas in which the self-interest, the very self-interest of this general society, dictates not continued suppression and not continued exploitation of a black minority, but rather opening this society up so that people do begin to have some of
that will never happen with capitalism, and that's the point. And I'll rewind if you didn't catch what he said here, so you can get the point that I just made. That what he just says here never will happen under capitalism.
But you're constantly on the lookout for leverage, and wherever you find it, you have to use it.
It seems to me that there ought to be possible to identify a number of areas in which the self-interest, the very self-interest of this general society, dictates not continued suppression and not continued exploitation of a black minority, but
where it's their interest to continue to stop oppression is essentially what the interest of the United States to stop oppression will only happen if capitalism is gone.
Rather, opening this society up so that people do begin to have some of the opportunities that they're supposed to have. It seems to me that a wise administrator, somebody who's concerned about the survival of the nation, is going to move in certain directions to avoid the kind of armed confrontation, which is very clearly a possibility and has even erupted in some places. In progress, put it that way. What I would think it would be wise for minority leadership to do would be to seek out and to interpret and to press those points in which there is a common self-interest. Economics, political, housing, things of this sort.
And that's what the Black Panthers were doing with the Young Patriots.
I'd like to have her react to that.
All right. First of all, this was the policy of Dr. Martin Luther King. He asked these people to move in their own self-interest. They refused. And secondly, what you're asking is something that's human. And I don't think it's possible for this establishment to react to a human problem in a human way. It's impossible. In terms of self-interest.
You think it's that inhuman?
It is. It's obviously that inhuman to me.
Kwame Torres makes this point too, is like the problem with Martin Luther King's philosophy of nonviolence, you have to be dealing with an oppressor who has a conscience. And he's like, the United States doesn't have a conscience. And it's the same sort of point that Kay Cleaver is making right now. Let's listen to her make this point again. Slightly back. There we go.
What you're asking is something that's human. And I don't think it's possible for this establishment to react to a human problem in a human way. It's impossible. In terms of self-interest.
You think it's that inhuman?
It is. It's obviously that inhuman to me. If you look at its history and what it's doing now. If that is human, then we're something else. So I have to assume that they're non-human. In terms of self-interest, it's a question of whose self-interest. There are masses and masses and masses of white people who would agree with you on that point. But these white people do not have any power. They do not have any say. They do not have any control. And the self-interests of the people who are in charge are not those of human beings. They're mainly based on money and power. You see, if these people would move in their self-interest, they wouldn't beat their own children in Chicago and crack their heads. If they moved in their self-interest, they wouldn't send their armed police onto their own college campuses where their own children are studying. They wouldn't do that. So in terms of their own people, they don't move in their own self-interest. So we can be assured that in terms of black people, they will not move in their self-interest. What is important is for black people to move in black people's self-interest and let them do whatever they want to do.
The grassroots white man has already taken his step. You know, you see those little American flags on those little cars, all those little Birchite policemen, you know. And in Newark, when the police went on a strike, they had a curfew in a black city where we couldn't come out the house after 12 o'clock because the police, many of whom don't even live in the city, went on strike. What I'm saying is on a local level, the repression is going to go even, you know, more violently to the right. And now at the national level, they'll be able to justify it, you know, hipper. And I think as America, you know, like stumbles to the conclusion that it is, you know, weak and about to be taken off by all the people in the world, that the more and more violent repressions will come. And the next Wallace that comes around, the next time, he will be much slicker, much hipper. He will have the benefit of...
So he's giving an example in the same way we'll say the next Trump that come around will be much slicker. He's giving Wallace. And maybe that more slicker Wallace was one of our past presidents that he would say. But we're saying DeSantis is a much slicker Trump, but then there could be even more, a much slicker DeSantis, much slicker Trump that's going to come around because the Democratic Party is so terrible.
A psychedelic, you know, hippie-oriented speechwriter, you understand? Yeah. With a much slicker publicity thing than old corn pone chewing George Wallace got. Yeah. You know, by the time he will be right in here.
Leroy, we actually could have that in President Nixon.
I also hear, I was going to add one thing, if I may, because I heard something else in there, which maybe self-interest, but it may be possible that black people are suicidal, and if so, can this country afford...
No, I don't. Black people are definitely not suicidal.
Well, let me finish. If I'm asking the question, if black people have a tendency to be suicidal, or if the opposition, the enemy, is homicidal, then can they afford for black people to even get in the position that they might destroy this country?
Well, first of all, I say black...
That's an interesting
Black people are already in that position. And secondly, black people are not suicidal at all. They're beautiful people interested in surviving and living. You know that. Black people want to live.
It's a very interesting...
I think I'm going to stop the video there. There's like 4 minutes, but we got through the bulk of it. And I do want, with the last 10 minutes here, I do want to get to the video where we're trying to seek out, is MLK a communist? I want to do that. And for those that are just joining and didn't get the explanation of this video, I'm going to give you an explanation of the video again. This is from, let's see, the John Birch Society. And so this is them proving that Martin Luther King, so they essentially think Martin Luther King is a fraud. And here, this is him proving this is just one of the bad things that Martin Luther King was, which was a communist. So they're proving him as a communist as if it's a bad thing. And I'm showing you this because to show the proof that they have that he's a communist. So that is the perspective we have here. Let me see here. It's literally just crazy stuff that they're saying in here. Not crazy stuff, but difference of opinion. So let me just play 30 seconds before we get to the part that I want to get to, just to give you context of the video.
With so much focus being placed on the color of one's skin, people have become very ignorant as to what happened during the so-called civil rights movement. For those of you that are
So he says the so-called civil rights movement, that's kind of a tip-off.
New to the society, during the 60s and 70s, the John Birch Society had many Black members who toured the country exposing just what was going on. Unfortunately, much of this history has been lost over the years, along with the exposing of certain individuals. Let's look at two people. The first one is Hunter Pitts Odell. He was a district leader for the Communist Party in New Orleans and served on the Communist Party's Central Committee in 1961. He used such aliases as John Vesey and Ben Jones. The other is Bayard Rustin, who started out in the Young Communist League and remained in that circle for at least into 1957. He was a convicted sex offender, having been caught.
So, convicted sex offender, he was convicted. Like maybe there was a law. I guess there was a law against homosexuality. So that's what he's calling a convicted sex offender. And I guess that's what it was at that time. But he was convicted of having homosexual relationships. Yeah. So, but you see how he's trying to color the character of the person. But anyway, let's look at it. Let's finish what he's saying here.
Into 1957. He was a convicted sex offender, having been caught in an automobile with two other men in a homosexual act on the streets of Pasadena, California, for which he served 60 days in jail. He went on to become the co-chairman of the Socialist Party of America after organizing the March on Washington, where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his "I Had a Dream" speech. Both of these men worked for King. Odell was hired as King's personal secretary in 19.
So the proof this is one of the things he's saying is that these were both provable communists, and both of these people work for Dr. King. Now he's going to continue. So, but let's continue down this path here. I guess I should have put this up for Aaron. My bad, Aaron. So, is MLK? I should say not is, because he said was MLK a commie? So that's what we're sort of exploring at this point. So I'll rewind it just a tad here.
These men worked for King. Odell was hired as King's personal secretary in 1960, but due to his notoriety of being a communist leader, King reluctantly let him go, since it was down.
King, he's claiming that King had to reluctantly let him go, Hunter Pitts Odell, because it was known he was communist. That's what he's saying here.
Damaging to King's image. Rustin and King together organized the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Later on, the homosexual leader of the Socialist Party, Rustin.
Why is he saying it? The homosexual leader. Oh man, this guy
was given the Medal of Freedom by President Obama in 2013. Then Governor Newsom of California pardoned him for his sexual conviction in 2020. With a track record of Rustin, how is it that he can be given such honors? Let me take you back to how the society exposed individuals like Rustin, Odell, or even King during the 60s and 70s. One of the tactics used by the society was to learn of King's itinerary and then schedule one of our speakers, Julia Brown, to appear ahead of him in those towns where King was to appear. Julia Brown was an undercover agent for the FBI, and she related what she had learned while serving in that task. While she could never definitely state that King was a communist, she attended communist schools and meetings where she was told that only Communist Party members were in attendance, and King was there.
That's his evidence, supposedly. Like I said, we're exploring this as sort of to get a confirmation, whereas we already know, as far as like as sort of an ideology, that he was a socialist. He was against capitalism and war, and felt that they were inextricably, if one of his quotes, linked together. Militarism was the other one. It was three heads that he thought. So alrighty. Sorry, I'm seeing something here in the comments here. Let me just go up. All right, so anyway, let me go back to the video and finish out.
She also testified that the party members were always told to look to King for leadership in the civil rights movement. King's final tour was canceled due to the scheduling of Julia Brown in front of him.
Yeah, so the evidence, she was an undercover agent. She went to many Communist Party meetings. And Martin Luther King was there. And she was told the only people who can attend these meetings are communists. So him having these two people on his staff that were part of the Communist Party or Socialist Party, I can't remember if he said the second one was, along with him going, supposedly being seen by this FBI person or being undercover person as being at communist meetings. So, I mean, it's sort of interesting pieces of evidence, even though it's from, you know, people who don't like him. You know, it is what it is. All right, so that's the evidence to sort of show it. I mean, again, I don't need it to confirm in my mind that Martin Luther King was a socialist, possibly communist, at least a socialist listening to communist teachings. So yeah, but this is going to conclude another episode of I Am Revolution. This one doing a different approach, or a unique approach in talking about MLK on his birthday, when we're talking about the assassination of MLK and what it proved. And there was a lot of people who, you know, from Kathleen Cleaver, to Dan Watts, who else do we see on there? Andrew Young, and some others speaking about the after effects and what does it mean that Martin Luther King is now killed. And that was the discussion. So I think we're going to leave it there. What's tomorrow? Sunday. I think Nick told me he's going to be back here Sunday. Of course, we have a few clips in the morning. And then we have the JB show. And then there might be another clip, or I may even come on. And then Nick will be on later, and even possibly, he said he's possibly going to try out Oh, there's something, an alarm going off. I thought that was my girls were back. So that is what's upcoming. We're currently at 276 likes. Thank you for that. On your way, let's get us to on your way out, let's get us to 300 likes. And I'm going to toss up your comments right now. And let's actually set up something here. I love the graphic. Did you see this graphic? Let me show you the graphic here. Let me put it on here. Love, love, love this graphic here. Yeah. this was the one that was the temporary one until Aaron got done with the actual one. So great graphic by Aaron. And let's, where am I here? 1 second, everybody. All right, so please like the stream on your way out. I think we're going to end it there. And of course, we're going to end it with a Martin Luther King. I think we can end with a Martin Luther King clip. Do I have one ready? Oh, yeah, I do have one ready. So I think this was an interesting discussion or interesting video to kind of examine on Martin Luther King's birthday weekend. There were some people that were a little bit more radical than Martin Luther King who had some critiques. I feel like RBN may have been in the same space. Not critique in the way that we critique progressive Democrats, because that's just a terrible, but critique in the way that, hey, maybe you need to be a little more stiffer than just nonviolence. So maybe. Not saying for sure, but let's let Martin MLK take us out for the weekend, and maybe you'll see us tomorrow or see me tomorrow. Maybe not, but definitely on MLK Day and Rome's birthday on Monday, you shall see us.
We read by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if a man doesn't have a job, nor liberty,
all right, so I had a problem with that video before, actually. So maybe the problem is the video. I thought it was just that day. So, all right, so we'll end with a different video. This is also a good one.
People is not just walking up like they used to do in the past, walking out, shooting a man down or getting maybe 200 or 300 people carrying you out and lynching you, but it's in a more settled way. They can let you starve to death, not give you jobs. These are some of the things that's happening right now in Mississippi. See, Mississippi is not actually Mississippi's problem. Mississippi is America's problem. Because if America wanted to do something about what has been going on in Mississippi, it could have stopped by now. It wouldn't have been in the past few years between 40 and 50 churches bombed and burned. You see, and this lead me to say, all of the burning and bombing that was done to us and the houses, nobody never said too much about that, and nothing was done. But let something be burned, by a black man, and then, my God, you see, the flag is drenched with our blood. Because, you see, so many of our ancestors was killed because we have never accepted slavery. We had to live on it, but we've never wanted it. So we know that this flag is drenched with our blood. So what the young people are saying now, give us a chance to be young men, respected as a man, as we know this country was built on the black backs of black people across this country. And if we don't have it, you ain't gonna have it either, because we gonna tear it up. That's what they saying. And people ought to understand that. I don't see why they don't understand that. They know what they've done to us. All across this country, they know what they've done to us. This country is desperately sick.